So we're returning to the city of Ravenna, which you may remember from late antiquity. This is where Rome had moved its capital towards the very end of the empire. And Justinian will actually reconquer most of the Italian peninsula. So Ravenna becomes a cultural center of Italy for a short period following Justinian's reconquest. And here, San Vitale is built in honor of Saint Vitalis, a martyr of the 2nd century. And what we see is a central plan structure. It's octagonal rather than round, and we have a central dome, very, very common with these structures. It should also be noted that there are no glass windows. All of the windows are actually alabaster, because at this time glass production is very low. We've seen the fall of Rome, so it's not really something we're going to see for a little while. Now, this structure is begun in 526 by the bishop Ecclesias, and by 540 we see the reconquest of the city, and Justinian gets involved, especially as a patron. He will never visit the city. Now, when you go inside, it's much more lavishly decorated than the exterior. It's covered in marble and mosaics, and these mosaics blend theological interests with political interests. So we're blending church and state. Remember, in the Byzantine Empire, the emperor is sort of acting as the Pope would today. So those powers are blended in one person. And this is the sanctuary of San Vitale. At the top, we have Jesus. Moving down, we will have an image of Jesus again. And it's just give you an idea, sort of a broader view of what this would look like. In the apse, in violet, here we have Christ enthroned. So this is Jesus on a throne in the form of the sphere of the earth. Around him, we have the rivers of paradise, as well as 2 archangels. Archangels are going to become more and more important. The archangels are sort of the major angels, such as Saint Michael, who's usually shown in armor and seen as the hand of God, Gabriel, who's seen as the voice of God, that sort of imagery. And on the far left, actually on the far right as we see it, is San Vitalis. And what he's doing is he's actually giving a model of the church to Jesus. But the more important panels that we're going to look at are called the Imperial Panels, and there are 2 of these. And this is symbolic of imperial authority in Ravenna, even though the emperor will never visit. It's no different than seeing a picture of the president in your classroom in grade school. And both are seen as allowing the emperor and the empress to be ever present at the Mass. And they will visually echo one another. So the first one, what we're seeing is Justinian in the center. He has a halo. That is showing that he is sort of a living saint. And this is because of his leadership position. Around him, we have courtiers and attendants off to the left side. On the right, we have Bishop Maximanus, and we see his name in Greek above him. And this is the bishop of the church at the time that these mosaics are created. And then we have 2 attendants to him, one carrying the holy book and one carrying incense. Justinian himself is actually carrying bread. This is the bread for the Eucharist, or Holy Communion in the church. So it's Justinian basically providing for the church in a very symbolic way. The more interesting piece of the 2 is actually Theodora and her attendants. In the center in violet, we have Theodora. She's carrying wine for the service. And on her robe, we see a depiction of the 3 magi down here at the bottom. Those are the people who bring gifts to Jesus when he's born, frankincense, myrrh, and gold. So she is providing, in much the same way, wine for the service. Again, making sure that she's always there for the service by incorporating her into this mosaic. Now, a couple of interesting things here. First of all this fabric that you see hanging, for example, here along the doorway or along the ceiling, those fabrics were actually incredibly common in early churches as well as through the medieval. They're there for two reasons. One, as decorative elements, but secondly, as insulation. Because what they would do in castles as well is they would hang this fabric in front of the wall, leaving dead air between the fabric and the wall, say about a foot or 2 feet. And that serves as insulation. It stops some of the heat getting out, it stops some of the cold getting in. It's not as effective as what we have today, but it is something. Now, the other interesting thing is she is being pushed, being escorted into the balcony. At the time, women were seen as sinning with their body, whereas men sinned with their minds. And so women, by their mere existence, were causing men to sin because men would think inappropriate things about women. So the way the church handled this at the time is women were put up in the balcony and men were put on the floor level. That way men could just look ahead and they don't have to look at the women above them. So that's what's happening. Even the Empress Theodora is going to have to follow these rules and be pushed up into the balcony. The rest of the image, including the fountain, are basically telling us how the church was decorated. Here we see Theodora's female attendants and 2 male attendants who have been more bodyguards than anything else.